The final pope? Prophecies point to a global turning point. The death of Pope Francis, the 266th Bishop of Rome, has cast a long shadow across the Catholic world and beyond. More than a routine end to a papal reign, his passing feels emblematic of a much deeper spiritual and civilizational transition. To some, it marks the close of a chapter in modern church history. To others, it stirs the quiet reawakening of prophecy, an accumulation of warnings and visions that have long pointed toward a critical turning point. Whether these prophecies are symbolic frameworks, divine revelations, or imaginative constructions of past centuries, they speak now with renewed urgency. If one takes them seriously, the world may not simply be entering a new pontificate, but crossing into the final movements of a spiritual drama that has been unfolding for generations. Take a minute and like this video and subscribe to this channel. Feel free to leave a comment. It really helps us to grow. The most well-known of these prophetic traditions is the prophecy of the popes, attributed to Saint Malachy, a 12th century Irish archbishop. The prophecy outlines 112 cryptic Latin mottos, each thought to refer to a future pope from his time until the end of the church age. For many years, the list was treated with mild curiosity. Yet interest grew as the papal line advanced and many mottos seemed to correspond to actual pontiffs uncannily. The final entry has always attracted particular attention. It describes not a mere motto, but a narrative. It speaks of Peter the Roman, a shepherd figure who leads the church through tribulations. The prophecy then concludes with the destruction of Rome and the final judgment. Pope Francis, while not named Peter, has been widely interpreted by some as the symbolic fulfillment of this final pope. As the first Jesuit pope, a son of Italian immigrants in Argentina, and a leader focused on humility and mercy, he embodied many paradoxes. His papacy was marked by crises, internal divisions within the church, scandals, a pandemic, and a dramatic shift in tone and doctrine. To those reading the prophecy closely, Francis represents not just another pope but the final pope, the one to preside during the beginning of the end. Now, with his death, the prophecy hangs heavy in the air. If this was indeed the final name on the list, what follows is not merely succession but judgment. A second source of concern is the third secret of Fatima, long shrouded in mystery and controversy. While the first two secrets related to visions of hell and the outbreak of world wars, the third secret was not revealed until the year 2000. It described a bishop dressed in white walking through a ruined city filled with corpses, before being killed on a hill by soldiers. The Vatican interpretation linked this to the 1981 assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II, but many were unconvinced. The language felt too final, too sweeping. Some believed the vision pointed not to a past event, but a future one. Under this interpretation, the bishop in white could easily refer to Pope Francis. He led the church through a time of cultural and moral decay, through scandals and confusion, and his later years were marked by isolation and increasing opposition. His death, to believers in this vision, may symbolize a spiritual execution, the final breaking of a church that has wandered too far from its core. Fatima warned that unless the world repents, a great chastisement would follow. With the death of the symbolic shepherd, that warning takes on new weight. The tribulations were not the end, they may be the beginning. The writings of Nostradamus are often vague, poetic, and heavily disputed, yet they too have drawn renewed attention. His quatrains, written in 16th century French, speak in shadowy language of upheaval, betrayal, and cataclysm. Several passages mention a great religious leader falling, the collapse of a spiritual order, and war erupting across Europe and the Middle East. One line describes a time when the sun appears double in the sky, when a great pontiff shall change country and a mastiff howls through the night. These images have long been debated, but in the context of current events, they begin to resonate. Some interpretations suggest that the fall of a great religious authority, such as Pope Francis, will coincide with global religious confusion. This period may give rise to false spiritualities, counterfeit gospels, and political movements disguised in moral language. The collapse of religion, in this view, is not the disappearance of belief, but the replacement of faith with ideology. The Pope's death could become the symbolic moment that shifts the balance, a spiritual vacuum waiting to be filled, possibly by forces not aligned with the original faith. Turning to southern Africa, one finds another source of prophecy in the visions of Sina van Rensburg. Though often focused on Boer identity and national destiny, his predictions included vivid imagery of chaos in Europe, the destruction of the Vatican, and spiritual confusion spreading like smoke. He spoke of Rome burning, of two popes, and of a world at war shortly after religious betrayal. His visions were never dated and were sometimes symbolic, but they suggest a chain reaction, a great spiritual fall, followed by war and disintegration. In this framework, the death of Pope Francis might not be an isolated event but the first domino. Europe, already tense and ideologically divided, could face a spiritual and political unraveling. The destruction of the Vatican, whether literal or metaphorical, would serve as a catalyst. Faith would falter, and into the void would pour new movements, some sincere, others deceptive. Van Rensburg foresaw not only material upheaval but spiritual inversion, where right and wrong would be exchanged and truth obscured. This leads naturally to the warnings of other Catholic mystics, many of whom spoke of a future time when a false pope would arise, and the true church would be forced underground. The 19th century stigmatist Marie-Julie Jahenny described a period of two rival papacies, one false and accepted by the world, the other true but hidden. In this vision, the church would suffer a terrible eclipse, its teachings distorted, its sacraments desecrated. Only a remnant would remain faithful, and their survival would require suffering, secrecy, and a return to a more apostolic life. Such visions are echoed in more recent Marian apparitions, such as those at Akita, Japan, which warned of fire from the sky, bishop opposing bishop, and a time when the living would envy the dead. If taken as sincere prophecy rather than metaphor, these warnings suggest that the death of a legitimate pope could open the door to manipulation, the enthronement of a counterfeit authority, and the persecution of those who refuse to comply. The church, long a public institution, might become hidden once more, surviving not through structure but through witness. There are those who believe that after a time of great suffering, divine intervention will come. Some mystics spoke of a great monarch and a holy pope who would restore the faith after purification. In this vision, Francis's death is not the end but the prelude to a refining fire. The church would shrink, suffer, and scatter, but it would not die. From the ashes, a smaller, poorer, but more spiritually authentic church would emerge. Its rebirth would not come through institutional reform, but through trial. What happens next is still unwritten. A conclave will be held. A new name will be chosen. But beneath the ceremonial certainty lies an uncomfortable question: what if the world has changed too much for old answers to work? If these prophecies are to be believed, the next phase will not be continuity, but confrontation. The spiritual and the geopolitical may collide in ways we are not ready for. The papacy, once a stabilizing force, may become a point of division. Or worse, a tool for agendas that do not serve the gospel. The atmosphere surrounding Pope Francis's death is different not because he was universally loved or hated, but because it feels final. The sense of foreboding, the alignment of prophetic threads, and the deepening moral confusion of the world combine into a single question: are we entering the time that was foretold? If so, then the age of watching is over. We are now inside the narrative. Whether it leads to judgment, chastisement, purification, or redemption depends not only on who leads next, but on how humanity responds. What comes after Francis may define the soul of the age. And yet, in the middle of all this speculation, it is vital to remember something deeper than the prophecies themselves. Fear has always been a companion to mystery, and prophecy can easily become a snare if it replaces faith with anxiety. The voices of the mystics, the saints, and the visionaries were never meant to paralyze, but to awaken. If these prophecies are true, they are not meant to make us obsessed with catastrophe, but to draw us back to God. We are not saved by knowing the timeline, we are saved by trusting the one who holds time in his hands. In an age flooded with visions and signs, our peace will not come from decoding omens, but from anchoring our hearts in the love and mercy of Christ. That is where the Church's future lies, and not in fear, but in faith. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. How do you feel about all this? Leave a comment.